and if I didn't, I'd have the shakes so bad, and all the symptoms of being in real.
So was there ever a point where you could just shut off that switch of wanting the alcohol, or in your case, needing the alcohol to numb the pain?
Was there ever a point where I could just shut it off?
Just not do it?
There wasn't a point where I could just do it until when she was 9 is when I said, I didn't care what it took. And it was funny because it wasn't until I stopped with the alcohol and everything that really helped ease my pain. I think a lot of being in the addiction and being caught up in that increases the pain level.
Sure, it magnifies it.
It does. It does.
It adds on you have the physical pain and then the emotional pain, and
right. And and it's funny. I volunteer up at the detox center every week, and I try to tell people that there are so many different ways that you can help with pain, but you really have to be your own advocate. I said, basically, you can get anything you want from doctors. You really can.
Oh,
you can talk your way in and out of anything. But it's very important because what you take goes into your body. You're the one that's going to suffer, and you're the one. If you're addicted, you're really going to suffer. And so you really have to be your own advocate. But there's all kinds of alternative medications, and the epidurals and everything for the pain management people. There are so many different ways that people can help alleviate pain. They don't have to take opiates. They don't have to take muscle. The things that you can get hooked on. There are a lot of other ways that they can do it. That the doctors aren't always right there to offer those up. So I tell people you really have to be your own advocate because it is your body, it is your life, and it really is a matter of life and death.
Absolutely. How did your alcoholism affect your family in other ways? The family structure. We heard Nikki talk about family vacations a little bit.
Well, she has a sister, Cassie, who is a year older than she is, who protected Nikki, or tried to protect Nikki a lot of the time. And I think that's why Nikki wasn't really aware so much until you said probably around 7 or so. Cassie always tried to protect her. And she would hear us arguing some, but usually Cassie would, take her off to the side. And so it really made Cassie grow up much earlier than she should have had to. My husband became an enabler. He always had to chauffeur me because I always drank in excess. I never just would go out, for dinner and have a glass of wine.
Yeah.
That was just the beginning. So, he always had to drive. And it just, everything, everyone has their role in an alcoholic family. The whole family is involved in playing a role that, especially when you start getting into recovery, I feel when like the one person who is in recovery, if they're the only one that's had any kind of treatment, sometimes it's very difficult because while they're changing, the rest of the people are like, what's going on? Because the life that they've been living and knowing no longer is like existing, and they're out in the cold like, what's going on? So for me, it was so important that my whole family got treatment at the same time.
Yeah, you went to the Betty Ford Center.
I did.
And Nikki, you were involved in the family program.
Yeah, the children's program. Program. My husband went to the family program. Cassie and Nikki went to the children's program. And that way we all learned, they were able to learn about the addiction, because I know for one, if I didn't have an addiction, I would find it very, very difficult to understand.
Oh, absolutely, especially at a younger age.
Mm-hmm.
The first thing you want to do is blame yourself and say, what part did I take in this? What sort of things did you learn in the children's program?
Well, I learned that it wasn't my fault, and that, my mom had the addiction, and that it wasn't even her fault. It was a disease. It wasn't a choice. It wasn't a choice of lifestyle. It wasn't
that your mom loved alcohol more than she loved you. I think that's huge.
Yeah.
Because so many people take that point of view of, if you loved me, fill in the blank.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And unfortunately, such a big part of addiction are the relapses. And you burn bridges because people say, well, you've told me before you're going to stop. Well, you know, when we say that, we really mean we're going to stop, but we can't always do that, you know, and so you have a relapse and everything, and people that don't have an addiction can't understand that. You know, they think that you're just lying to them, you know, for whatever reasons, and whereas, you know, your whole heart means you're going to stop, but you're just not able. You know, something really inside of you has to change. For me, I really felt it had to be something spiritual, had to change. Something inside of me, in my soul, in my heart, changed. That enabled me to make the changes.
That day that Nikki asked you if it was her fault that you drank, you think that was the moment of clarity?
Yeah. Yep. Absolutely.
And if I had been any older, I would have started to grow more resentment. I think it's the fact that I was such a young age, it was easier for me to get over it versus some kids, like their parents are still drinking to the point where they leave the house. And I think it's a lot more resentment grows the older the child gets. And I really feel like while it's difficult when you're a young kid, when you start to grow up and fully grasp the situation, more resentment grows because you still don't understand the addiction. And you're able to let that anger grow. Like your parents weren't there at that big game. Your parents, like, just the more issues add up, and it's harder to reconcile that.
Mm-hmm.
What were some of the challenges you had to overcome and that you were faced with when you went into treatment? Because I would imagine you went to treatment, so you literally had to, as much as at times your alcoholism, your addiction had a very strong effect on your family, it's still not the same as literally physically being removed from your family, going to the opposite side of the country for help. How do you do that?
Well, I'll tell you, I cried like the whole plane ride. I got to Chicago and had to change planes, and every ounce of me wanted to get on another plane and come right back to Albany. But I didn't, and you know, then I've got the alcohol cart going up and down the aisle, and I'm thinking, there's nobody here policing me, you know, I can. And at that point, I had been sober for 3 months when I went into treatment.
So you literally got on a plane by yourself in New York, went out to the Betty Ford Center. There's an alcohol cart going up and down the aisle.
And I had been sober for 3 months, but I just knew, you know, so many people, when you relapse, they don't make it back in. You know, people out there, you die. So many people die from this disease.
I've said that several times. You know, people ask me all the time is, what keeps it green for me? I carry obituaries in my back pocket. In fact, I have them right now.
Yeah. And I go to the detox center every week.
Of my friends and people that I know that didn't make it back. People, like you said, with one obituary is a person that had 13 years sober. Yeah. Went back out and didn't come back in.
Yeah. And, you know, I think I was afraid that if I didn't go when I went, if I relapsed, I may never make it. You know, and so also another thing that was hard for me at that time was my insurance wouldn't cover it either. So I pretty much had to drain my bank account to go. But I thought, if I don't, I may never make it. You know, I may not live to make it into recovery.
Are you afraid that Nikki may take the same steps that you did?
Well, you know, I wonder about it sometimes.